By holding on to some problem and keeping your attention on the past event or person who you feel is responsible for your pain, you are allowing that person or event to hold you emotionally hostage. That means you're giving away your energy, your power to create, and your very life force to someone or something outside of you. In a sense, by disengaging from the thoughts and emotions of the past and returning to the present moment, you begin breaking the energetic bond to that person, problem, or painful experience. When you do this enough times, you're no longer ruled by the negative emotions because you've moved your attention off of them. That is forgiveness. Memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. Welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. In this show, we're getting real about navigating the ups and downs of life together. I'm your host, Erin, and we're ditching the pressure to have it all figured out along the way because honestly, nobody does. We'll explore all things healing, growing, creating, and connecting. And if you deal with anxiety, depression, being a highly sensitive person, or just feeling overwhelmed by life sometimes, I see you, and this show is for you. My intention with these conversations is simple: to leave you feeling empowered, validated, and most importantly, reminded that you are never alone, no matter where you're at on your own journey. Learning that we all have the power to heal genuinely changed my life. And the best part, healing does not have to be complicated. The smallest changes really can make the biggest impact, and it can be joyful, fulfilling, and something that we do together. So join me in getting real about what it means to heal. Thank you for being here, and now let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin, or welcome back to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. Whether you are listening or watching today over on YouTube, I am grateful to have you, as always. How are you guys feeling following this last full moon eclipse? The energy has been potent, and it's been all about releasing anything that does not serve us, and that is the energy of full moons always, but under an eclipse, it is amplified. And a lot of this time, this can mean that you don't have a choice. The universe, the energy is intervening, and it is cutting away whatever is no longer serving you. And sometimes this doesn't feel like it's happening for our highest good, but it always is. There's nothing to fear at any time with whatever is going on astrologically. There can be a lot of fear-mongering in the astrology world, but there's nothing to fear, just to be aware of and know that things are always happening in your favor. But the energy has been potent. My partner in hosting retreats, Lacey, and I hosted our women's retreat this past weekend in a beautiful heated dome with some lovely ladies who I feel so honored and grateful every time leaving one of these retreats, because there's so much power in women coming together in general and holding space for each other to feel and release and experience whatever it is they need to experience throughout the retreat. I'm always so pleasantly shocked, not necessarily shocked, but pleased. And my heart is always warmed to see how supportive all of the participants are of each other. It's beautiful. So that was a lovely experience, and I have been feeling this releasing energy heavy. I have felt like I want to sleep for a week for the past few days. And just leaning into that and knowing that that's okay too. To listen to your body when it's telling you to rest. And know that you're not falling behind. Resting is productive. It is necessary. And this leads me into today's episode, which is all about forgiveness, because this is tied to release. And I felt inspired to talk about forgiveness. What is forgiveness? What does it really mean? And why is it so crucial to practice forgiveness, not only for your emotional well-being, but also your physical well-being? There is so much science and research behind the power of forgiveness and the impact that it has on your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health. And this is why I am passionate about holistic health and wellness, because I strongly believe that taking into account your emotional wellness on top of your physical wellness and your mental wellness, it is all tied together. And that's what holistic means, approaching things as though they are all tied together and they all affect each other and impact each other. And I know that's when I have found my greatest healing has come from taking this approach. And forgiveness is something that we can have really backwards what it means or what it even is a lot of the time. And I think it's really important to talk about because it's something that we can practice constantly. And we'll get into all of it right away here. I was especially inspired to talk about this because I was recently listening to some Joe Dispenza interviews. If you aren't familiar, Dr. Joe Dispenza is a best-selling author of many books, a researcher of epigenetics, quantum physics, and neuroscience. You may have heard of Joe Dispenza meditations, and you may think that his approach to things is all spiritual, but it's actually the opposite. He approaches things from a very scientific, biology-based stance, and I love when science and spirituality can coexist, and to be honest, 100% of the time they do. And so he approaches everything from research and science, biology based. Again, looking at things from a holistic standpoint where your mental, physical, and emotional health are all tied together and all impact each other. So there are 3 types of stress: emotional, physical, and chemical. And there are 3 types of balance: emotional, physical, and chemical. And the fact is that if you don't prioritize and work on balance emotionally, then the balance of the other 2 aren't going to stick around for long, and you're not going to experience that true change, healing, or growth. That being able to practice forgiveness can allow you to experience that balance, because studies show that holding on to resentment, bitterness, or anger increase stress levels, which increases pain, illness, and disease. And 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints. So we clearly want to do everything that we can to bring that number down, relieve the stress in our life, bring down our stress levels. And we probably hear that a lot in today's world, but how do we do that? Maybe you have been working on self-care and taking care of your body, but you find yourself continuing to feel stuck or be in a loop of coming back to the same place that you always end up in, and you might be missing out on that emotional balance aspect, especially when it comes to forgiveness and holding on to the emotion of past events, past traumas, past versions of yourself, because forgiveness is not always about another person. Very often, yes, it is, but even more often, the struggle is forgiving ourselves for past situations, past things that we've done or said, the way we handled things in the past. Forgiving ourselves is often harder than forgiving others. I know for myself, I actually feel that this is one thing that I have not had a hard time doing in life, is forgiving others. I feel like it's always been easier for me to forgive others over forgiving myself. Forgiving myself is where I really struggled. I feel that I kind of always had innately some understanding of the fact that forgiving others just felt better than holding grudges towards them, even since being young. I remember in the days of making like your emo Facebook statuses in like junior high or whatever, I remember making some that would have these deep quotes about forgiveness and how holding on to hate for others only is venom for yourself, and if you hate others, you're just hating yourself, stuff like that. And I was always obsessed with reading quotes and blogs. I don't know if they were called blogs back then. Just reading deep things and then posting them on my Facebook story. They make me laugh every day when I look at my memories. But I remember posting stuff like that, and I remember some responses of my peers being like, no, not true. I can feel that way towards others, and that does not mean that I hate myself. No, I can hold a grudge. Some people deserve it. And I don't know, maybe it's from watching so much Oprah with my mom after school since like grade 1, but I just had an understanding and a feeling that when it came to the emotions, again, I'm a highly sensitive person, so I feel things very deeply. And whenever I'd be hurt by someone or something, I would feel that hurt deeply, but it felt better to me to not hold a grudge and to try in any way that I could look at something from the other person's shoes or have some level of empathy, grab onto anything I could that could allow me to forgive them and then move on. But then when it came to forgiving myself for things, that is a whole other story that can still sometimes be a struggle that I have to consciously practice at, and learning things like what I've learned about forgiveness from Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I am going to read directly from some of his teachings and his findings. These are things that help me to continue to work on that muscle when it comes to forgiveness towards myself. Learning that forgiveness literally rewires our brain. It allows for neuroplasticity to happen, and neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to grow and change throughout life. So forgiveness is not just about spiritually forgiving or just feeling better emotionally. It is literally restructuring your brain and allowing you to live a more healthy, optimized life as you go on. There's science behind forgiveness and our well-being. Now I want to share a little bit directly from Dr. Joe Dispenza to make sure that I am making this clear, because what he has to say about forgiveness, once you hear it, really gives you the permission and the motivation to practice forgiveness in your life. Okay, so Dr. Joe says, and I will link this blog description, his website, in the show notes below so you can read it for yourself and check out his website. But he says, we've all had situations in our life where we've been shocked, betrayed, traumatized, manipulated, or abused in one way or another. We can all agree that the emotional gravity of these situations creates very strong impressions in our biology. In fact, the stronger emotional reaction to a person, problem, or experience, the more altered internally we become. When these types of upsets occur, our internal alarm systems switch on, and in doing so, because the event is so threatening or painful, the brain freezes the frame and takes a snapshot of the external event. We could say that the brain has captured a moment in time, a moment which actually no longer exists. And in the process, the event becomes neurologically embossed in the brain. Another way of saying this is that the event has left a physical impression on our biology. We call this long-term memory. The side effect of this shocked system is that, because of the strength of the emotion, the stress chemicals that cause us to live in survival are triggered. Because those chemicals, which are the end products of emotions, are so unpleasant, we do whatever we can to avoid them. The ironic part is that, in trying to avoid them, we keep reliving and revisiting the memory of the event over and over again. Now we're stuck in a loop of thinking and feeling the very emotions that we don't want to feel. This process is how the conditioning process begins, by continuously experiencing a thought and a feeling, an image and an emotion, and a stimulus and a response. In this repetitive process, not only is the memory logged in the brain, but additionally, the emotion or feeling is being conditioned into the body. It's also how the body becomes beholden to chemical instructions, and as a result, the body becomes subconsciously conditioned to be the mind of that emotion. Now the trauma lives in the body as well as the brain. Okay, are you guys still with me? I know this is a lot, but he really does say it best, so I want to read directly his words, and then we will unpack. Okay, he goes on to say, because the body is so objective, it doesn't know the difference between the actual experience that originally created the emotion and the brain's memory that is creating the emotion. If thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body, and how we think and how we feel make up our state of being, then it makes sense that this person's entire state of being is becoming hardwired and emotionally conditioned to the past. By recalling the same memory over and over again, we are firing and wiring the same circuits into neural networks, causing them to fire more automatically the next time, which means it's easier to remember that painful past. Additionally, the same feelings will be easier to create because the body has been manufacturing the same chemicals and hormones every day. This is, I think, the most important part to hear, because we talk about how our subconscious is 95% of our thoughts, and they are conditioned thoughts. They aren't even thoughts that we consciously want to think. They're thoughts that have been conditioned into us, and this is exactly what he's talking about. So, As a result of the emotions of fear, anger, hostility, frustration, pain, and suffering, and so on, because they are derived from the stress hormones and emergency systems of survival, the brain tells the body to prepare for the event in case it happens again. Now guess what happens? Our entire perception of the world becomes based on that memory. This is what keeps the body connected to the past. In other words, we will see the world equal to the story we tell ourselves about the past. Okay, we're almost done reading. Now, if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, by holding on to some problem and keeping your attention on the past event or person who you feel is responsible for your pain, you are allowing that person or event to hold you emotionally hostage. That means you're giving away your energy, your power to create, and your very life force to someone or something outside of you. That is vital energy that can be used to create a new future, a new destiny, optimal health. It begs the question, how much of your creative energy could you be using to change your life or your body? In a sense, by disengaging from the thoughts and emotions of the past and returning to the present moment, you begin breaking the energetic bond to that person, problem, or painful experience. When you do this enough times, you're no longer ruled by the negative emotions because you've moved your attention off of them. By no longer feeling those emotions, you will naturally stop thinking about them. That is forgiveness. And a memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. The first time I heard him say this, I was like, I love that sentence. A memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. Okay, we're done reading now. Thank you, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Again, I will link this post and his website in the show description below so you can read it for yourself. So let's unpack a little bit of the key takeaways here. I think number one is that we can become addicted to stress. We become addicted to the emotions that surge, the stress hormones, the stress chemicals, because it's what our body knows. It's looking for opportunities to react with that throughout our day-to-day life. So we can be addicted to the stress without even realizing it, and then wondering, why do I always end up in the same toxic cycle? Or why do my thoughts always end up looping this way? Or why do I always end up behaving this way? Why do I attract these kind of people or these kind of relationships or this kind of energy into my life? And it's because a lot of the time we are addicted to it. Research shows simply acknowledging and becoming aware of the fact that that's happening and the fact that we don't want that to be the case anymore starts to rewire your brain to bring focus away from those emotions and feeling that stress. Because research shows that just the slightest elevation of oxytocin causes us to naturally want to forgive, because you feel this feeling that feels so good and feels so much better than the feelings of anger, resentment, or bitterness. And then when you feel that feeling of feeling good, why would you want to go back to feeling angry, resentful, and bitter? So you're naturally inclined to want to forgive more, whether, again, it's yourself or others. You're taking the focus off of the situation, the person, or the emotions that are keeping you stuck. And a roadblock to forgiveness and to allowing all of this to happen is feeling like forgiveness is just letting someone off the hook that doesn't deserve it. Well, they did this and they don't deserve my forgiveness, or I'm letting them off of the hook too easily. It's very normal to think or feel those things. But again, understanding how all of this actually affects and impacts your health and your well-being can empower you to not look at it that way, and to, instead of focusing on the situation, whatever happened, focus on the emotions and the feelings, because you're not going to want to feel angry, bitter, and resentful. You're going to want to feel grateful, joyful, love, creativity, compassion, because it chemically feels better to feel those feelings. And another thing that's important and can help you in forgiving, especially when you come across this roadblock of feeling like someone doesn't deserve it, it's not about the other person, and you don't have to communicate your forgiveness with the other person if it's with another person necessarily. You don't have to communicate it with them. You can journal about it. You can have open dialogue with yourself about it, speaking it out loud into existence, writing it down in your journal. You don't necessarily have to tell the other person you forgive them. depending on your relationship with them. So many different factors that can impact whether or not it's safe for you to tell someone you forgive them, or that you even want to tell them that you forgive them. So again, it's not about them, and you can forgive without having to have a conversation or communicating it. So when we take everything that I just read from Dr. Joe, forgiveness in its simplest explanation is calling your energy back to yourself and reclaiming your energy. Because when your energy and your focus is on feelings of anger, bitterness, resentment, pain, struggle, it is draining you and depleting you and keeping you stuck in a lack energy. And when you forgive, you are removing the emotion behind what happened, and the result is that you call your energy back to yourself, and that energy can now be invested in feeling joy, love, compassion, fulfillment, creativity. You are amplifying your life force by practicing forgiveness. And your life force can be used to create your goals, your dreams, your desired life, the version that you want to live as. Because the version, if you really get honest with yourself and ask yourself, what does my ideal version of myself live like, think like, act like, feel like? It is one that feels more joy and love and abundance than anger, resentment, bitterness, lack, which again, we have to remind ourselves only harms ourselves more than anything. And yes, we do have to continuously remind ourselves of this, because our subconscious mind wants to feed us our past conditioning and feed us old thoughts and patterns and beliefs that aren't even ours anymore. They're just deeply ingrained in us. Okay, so this is all great information to have. But how do we do this? How do we actually practice forgiveness? And the answer is that we have to put ourselves in the feeling that we desire to feel before we feel like we've gotten there, if that makes sense. We have to practice putting ourselves in the emotional state that we want to be in, our ideal emotional state. How would we ideally feel that feels better than the anger, resentment, bitterness, etc.? And we can do this by becoming mindful, which means bringing our minds back to the present moment. Whenever that past conditioning starts to come up, a thought loop starts to come up, old limiting beliefs start to come up, noticing them is the biggest step in itself, helps to rewire your brain. And then shifting your awareness into the present moment and into the feeling that you desire to feel instead. Noticing and awareness is the biggest key to changing and growing, because naturally there will be times when our subconscious mind, which feeds us 95% of our thoughts, wanders back into thoughts or feelings of frustration, anger, bitterness, resentment. Becoming aware of that, and then shifting your brain into the direction that you want it to go in instead, and focus it on what you want to focus on instead of those feelings. And over time, the more you practice this, the more naturally your brain will steer in that direction that you are desiring it to steer in. So let me give you a little breakdown of some actionable steps that you can use in your everyday to practice forgiveness. Because it's great to hear all of this information, this research, but sometimes having more information isn't helpful unless we have actionable steps. So, ways to practice forgiveness in your everyday. Number one, start small. It can often feel daunting to forgive something that has been with you for a very long time. So start with small things. Maybe something from the past that you don't feel extremely emotionally charged about anymore, or something that happens to you throughout your day that feels minor enough that it's easy for you to forgive. So for example, let me think of an example. Maybe you are in a meeting at work and someone says something that disregards the hard work you put in on a project or something that you are presenting, something that you're doing. Someone says something and it's hurtful to you and diminishes the effort you put in. Something like that. I'm thinking on the spot. So you're going to follow these steps. Again, we're starting small, but you can apply these to forgiveness of anything towards yourself, towards others. We're starting small to work that forgiveness muscle so it becomes easier and more natural. So number one, you're going to acknowledge the emotions you feel, because Practicing forgiveness in real time is not about diminishing what you feel or your experience or shoving it down and not feeling it, because then that brings us right back to the stress that causes pain and illnesses and disease. We know that emotions that are not expressed or felt end up being stuck in your body. It's stuck energy in your body and you become unbalanced, and then you have pains and illnesses of the mind, the body, yada, yada, yada. So we don't want to shove our feelings down. We want to, number one, acknowledge what we're feeling. So you're feeling hurt, you're feeling sad, you're feeling angry. Acknowledge it and let it be felt, but not for too long. You want to then move into empathize. As hard as it can feel sometimes, you want to practice empathy towards whoever or whatever it is that made you feel this way. And this is again where we can get stuck feeling like, well, this person doesn't deserve it. This person has no idea that what they did was wrong and they don't deserve my forgiveness. And again, we just remind ourselves that it's not about the other person. So finding any string of empathy you can have for someone, trying to put yourself in their shoes or in their perspective, or just deciding, you know what, they're a human and I'm just deciding to forgive them. Empathize. Then next is express. Express how this made you feel. And you don't necessarily have to express this directly to the person or the people. You can express this in private, in your journal. Maybe you are speaking out loud to yourself or you're writing it down, but you don't necessarily have to express it to the person. If you feel safe to do so, you can. That's healthy in relationships that you have in your life, but you don't always want to do that, and that's okay. Because again, it's not about them, but expressing it is going to help you release those charged emotions. Next is you're going to commit to forgiveness. You're going to decide energetically, emotionally, mentally, physically, you are forgiving, and you are calling your energy back to yourself. You are calling the energy that was put into those feelings of hurt, sadness, anger, bitterness. You are calling that energy back to you now instead of letting it continue to deplete you and keep you stuck in that lack energy. And the final step is to reflect on benefits. Reflect on all these benefits we're talking about of practicing forgiveness. Reflect on why you're doing it for yourself and your health and wellness, not only emotionally, but physically, mentally, optimizing your well-being is why you're doing this. Remind yourself of the benefits. So those are the steps to practice forgiveness. Again, start small, and the more that you practice this, the more that forgiveness muscle is built, and the more you're rewiring your brain to operate in this way. So number 1, start small. Number 2, acknowledge. Number 3, empathize. Number 4, express. Number 5, commit to forgive. Number 6 is reflect on benefits. And outside of this framework, meditation and nervous system regulation are two things that are going to be hugely impactful and powerful in allowing you to make this change and this growth and this healing. Because meditation, you are practicing detaching from your thoughts and instead putting your focus on the present moment and feeling gratitude and love and compassion and whatever emotions your ideal version of yourself would feel. And the more you sit with meditation, the more naturally you are able to detach from your thoughts. And that's going to make going through your day-to-day life or any experience in life more emotionally balanced and less emotionally charged, where then you are breaking the addiction we talked about at the top of this episode, where we can become addicted to stress and the stress chemicals and the emotionally charged reactions we have to things. Meditation scientifically, biologically allows us to break free from that. And a lot of the time we can think, oh, I can't meditate. I can't stop my thoughts. I can't stop my mind from racing. I can't sit still. I thought that for years and years and years, and I would get so frustrated trying because I just couldn't stop my thoughts. And when I came to learn and understand that it's not about stopping your thoughts, it's about allowing them to come and then allowing them to go. I'll share something that was really helpful for me, especially when I started with meditation, is to picture yourself sitting at the edge of the ocean. You're sitting with your toes in the sand, and anytime a thought comes up while you're meditating, imagine the thought being the water flowing into the shore, touching your toes, And as you're imagining the water floating back out into the ocean, that is your thought leaving. So you are detaching as the water is floating back out into the ocean. Your thought is floating away from you. And then another thought comes up with the ocean water touching your toes, and then it floats away from you. That worked for me because now I'm a meditation teacher, but this really came full circle because for years I thought I just couldn't meditate because it does feel really hard. But it's understanding that it's not about stopping your thoughts. And the more you practice becoming detached from your thoughts and just allowing them to flow by and bringing yourself back into the present moment, that is what is rewiring your brain. And then nervous system regulation. We talk about literally every episode. I have a whole nervous system regulation tools episode, and I'm going to do a series soon where I have episodes dedicated to each tool so that I can focus on each tool in each episode. But nervous system regulation is allowing your body to feel safe, to change and heal and grow. Working on regulating your nervous system allows you to more naturally and accessibly shift in and out of fight or flight or freeze and rest and digest. And rest and digest is a state that your nervous system has to be in order for any healing, growth, or change to take place. And when you do things to regulate your nervous system, you are wiring your body to feel safe with change and growth and healing, and safe to experience different situations and emotions throughout your day-to-day and not get stuck spiraling in them or reacting to them. So this can be things like slowing down, taking time for mindfulness, like meditation, yoga, mindful movement, walking outside, singing, dancing, humming, shaking your body, literally just shaking your limbs around, tapping on your body, expressing yourself creatively, speaking more kindly to yourself, laughing, co-regulating with other people or animals, really just creating more time to prioritize yourself and your joy and signal to your body that you are safe and that it's safe to grow and heal and change and to forgive, as we're talking about in this episode. So we get it backwards a lot of the time, thinking that we have to reach a desired outcome before we can feel a desired feeling, when the reality is the opposite. Feeling has to come first. We have to practice putting ourselves in the feeling that we desire to feel, and that is when the magic happens. That is when our reality changes. That is when the change and growth comes. Which is so backwards from what we think or what we're really told or shown in life. But when it comes to forgiving someone, you are putting yourself in the feeling of forgiving them before you've been receiving any sort of confirmation or action or apology or any sign of remorse from people. You are giving yourself the feelings that you desire to feel from within yourself. And that is going to empower you, and there's no greater feeling than feeling empowered to heal yourself. Learning that we have the ability to heal and grow and change innately within ourselves was the greatest lesson I've ever learned in my life, and there's a lot of lessons that come with it, and I'm still continuing to learn them and sharing them with you guys along the way. And I hope that something in this episode has resonated with you or been helpful to you. And I want to say I completely empathize with the fact that this can be much easier said than done. Again, it is something that we have to practice at. Like I've said, we have to remind ourselves of the benefits of doing this for ourselves, for our own healing and wellness. You might not feel like forgiving someone, you might not feel like they deserve it, but my main intention with this episode is to share what I've learned and continue to learn about the fact that one of the greatest things you can do for yourself, for your overall health and wellness, to literally live a better life in all aspects, to rewire your brain, is to forgive, whether it's other people or yourself. By forgiving, you are setting yourself free and calling your energy, your life force back to yourself so that you can live in an abundant state and invest your energy in things that bring you joy and fulfillment, creativity, love, prosperity, rather than having it be drained and depleted by outside sources that are only keeping you stuck and in lack and draining you when you deserve to be growing, healing, and living in an abundant state. And when it comes to yourself, know that you are worthy of forgiveness, and know that your past does not define you. You are never, ever alone in anything you have felt thought or experience, and we are navigating the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of life together. I am so grateful to have had you here with me today. As always, I love to hear from you guys. If you have any feedback, anything you want to chat about, ask about, I have everything linked down below. You can find me on Instagram at ebbsandflows222 or send me an email at erinebbsandflows@gmail.com. I will link Dr. Joe Dispenza down in the link below. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week. Sending a lot of love and gratitude. Bye-bye.